Dhoni fans shouldn't worry. They will see more of him, but they'll see it in yellow, not in blue, in my opinion.
Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of All Things Cricket by the 12th Man. I am your host, Ujjwal Sachdeva, and we have with us a very special man today. A man of multiple talents, the host of Match Point, a qualified lawyer, a stand-up comedian, someone who we've seen on our screens interacting with the biggest names in cricket. Today, we plan to go beyond the field with none other than Raunak Kapoor. Welcome, Raunak. It is an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ujjwal. That's a very flattering and a very well-written introduction. So that's a nice way to start.
Thank you so much. So, Raunak, we plan to do this in three segments. Initially, I want to ask you about sports broadcasting and your opinions on some of the things related to that. After that, some questions on Indian cricket and ending with a fun rapid-fire segment.
Lovely. Let's go for it.
I'll start with my first segment. It's about sports broadcasting again, as I said. So my first question to you is that you've been a sports broadcaster for quite some time now. And being someone who knows exactly what the nitty-gritties are of this field and what is required, what would be your two-piece advice to budding sports journalists, budding sports broadcasters?
Yeah, so I guess it's a field that is obviously very exciting. And I mean, who wouldn't want to just make a living by watching and talking cricket, right? Yeah. So, and I know now with our brief interaction before we've recorded this that you two are an engineer that is passionate about the field of sports journalism, sports media, sports broadcast, and essentially that's where we tend to come from, right? There are very few broadcasters that actually come via the medium of broadcast school or journalists in cricket that actually come from a journalism background. By and large, when you get into something like the coverage of sports, you have chosen an alternate path, something different from the career you tend to take. And I think the first step is exactly that. It is taking that big step, that chance. Sports broadcast, sports journalism in general doesn't quite pay like other fields do, like engineering does or medicine does or business or accountancy or banking may. But it's rewarding at a far higher level. And it's for people that have the courage to take that step firstly, that that find rewards along the way. So the first bit of advice I would give is if anyone is genuinely passionate about sports media, sports broadcast, take that step. You have to you have to take a few risks, you have to sacrifice on certain things. But in fact, if anything, if this lockdown has taught us something, is we must not let go of opportunities on things that we feel genuinely passionate about. Our priorities have been put in perspective. And therefore, if there's someone who really wants to pursue sports broadcast, then that's the first step. Be ready to pursue it. That's the thing that you need to first be pushed to. People would say things to dissuade you, citing the lack of stability, lack of assurance, which again, in this lockdown, we've learned is in every field. So let's make no mistake. There are risks involved everywhere. The first thing you need to do is take the chance. Now, as far as taking the chance itself goes, what's the definition of taking a chance? It's not being careless or calloused in terms of career plans and paths. There needs to be a sense of security when you pursue a field like sports broadcast. It's uncertain. It takes time. You need to be patient. It's almost like pursuing something. If you're talking about TV gigs like anchoring, presenting, commentary, then that's an even more niche club, right? Yeah. So it's almost like someone saying, I want to be a top of the line actor or a top of the line artist. There will be a struggle. There will be opportunities that are few and far in between. And then hopefully over time, you make use of your talent and convert those opportunities into something for yourself. But in order to do that, it is my belief that you must have a sense of security about yourself. And how does the sense of security come? You need to have a tremendous amount of belief and confidence in your own ability. I find it hard sometimes to try and tell people that this is not a field for everyone. It's not like if you keep at it, you will be able to master it. You either have the basic skill set that is needed to be camera friendly or even radio friendly, or you don't. And if you have that, you need to be realistic about whether you possess those abilities. Once you are realistic about that, then how do you achieve a sense of security where you can throw your head into this direction and say, right, I'm going to try and push everything and be a sports broadcaster. And I think the way to do it is actually similar to what, say, you've done or what I happen to do. Where we pursued an education, we completed that education, which allowed us a sense of security about where our life might go. We then take a chance to see if we hit it off, if the lottery hits, right? And maybe for some time and I know a number of people that have had the good fortune of working with that have even written to me asking for internships when they've been in either investment bankers or CAs or engineers. And I've said, yeah, sure, come down. And they look at it for a couple of months and either their paths have changed drastically and they're like, okay, no, I'm going to work in cricket now, or I'm going to pursue sports media.
Yeah.
Or they say, you know what, this is not for me. This is not something that I initially imagined. So they get a bit of a reality check, but at least they have something to go back to. So that's where a sense of security comes in both ways. More importantly, my definition of a sense of security is that when you're pursuing something which is so intrinsic towards your personal talent, you should be able to do so without feeling insecure that if I don't have this, then what, right?
Yeah.
And that makes you a better broadcaster, in my opinion. So as far as what should be done, like I said, what you're doing right now, in spite of being an engineering student, in spite of interning at a prestigious IT firm, or doing what your academic path suggests is the right thing to do now, you haven't lost touch with what is your passion, which is engaging with people that are connected in the field. You've obviously done a couple of episodes of this before. I'm sure you intend on doing a few more. And that in its own way will be your contribution to making sure you're still at it. All it takes is for somebody at some point to see 5 episodes of the 12th Man, and suddenly we go like, all right, maybe Ujjwal's, something that we're looking for. Let's give him a go. Without that, what can you present? Without that, you're just a message or an email saying, I'm very interested in this.
Exactly.
But how do you investigate that? So I think you're on the right path. And today's world is so full of opportunity. All you need is a camera. You don't need anything else. You don't need people holding that camera for you also. You've got YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got Zoom, you've got everything. So document your work and allow for the world to, find it at the right time with the right sort of pressure and the right sort of push. I'm sure, if the content is good, it'll reward itself. So that's the other thing I would suggest. I remember saying this to a lot of people. I said this on a previous chat as well on this. Sometimes you ask someone, oh, do you play an instrument? And they go like, oh, yeah. So what do you play? The guitar. Oh, but I used to. I don't do it anymore. Right? Now that's disservice to a talent. If you have a talent, it can't be rusting away. So if you are passionate about broadcasting, if you feel you do have that talent, then there's no point in saying, I used to do these videos back in 2010 and I haven't done anything in 10 years because I was studying engineering or I had my exams or I was working. That's the kind of balance you need to strive. It also keeps you connected with the sport in its own way. If you continue talking to people in the sport, continuing to, we all might be passionate fans, but to take the next step, you also need to be a student of the game. And that's something that makes for a good broadcaster. So that's my, I wouldn't say in a nutshell because I've gone on a bit. I tend to do that. But that's my advice. Take a chance first. And the first step is to make sure that you remain connected with whatever it is that you're passionate about. If it's writing, write a blog. It doesn't have to be visual. If you think you want to be a sports journalist, write your own blog about it. Put it up regularly everywhere. Share it on Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Like I said, the world is there for us now to make full use of.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. And Raunak, actually what I do in my rapid fire segment is there is a question that if you were not a broadcaster or if you were not a cricketer, then what? So perhaps we know that for you, then you would have been a lawyer. But then you say that we have to make that transition. So my question to you being, when did that realization come to you? How did you make that transition? And how did you exactly get into this field?
Yeah, I guess, I've said this a few times. It's a slightly long story. I'm going to try and make it shorter for you. But this involves a lot of luck, right? Right place at the right time. And the opportunity must come at the right time. Like I said, it's not a field which has a specific path that if I study this or if I go to this school or this college or work at this place, I will end up as a sports broadcaster. There's a lot of hit and miss, and you have to hope to meet the right people at the right time. I go back to what I said at the top of the first answer. You must take a chance, right? So when I was at college at GLC studying law in Mumbai, the local All India Radio Mumbai station was just a few hundred meters away. And the day on one particular day, it was an India-Bangladesh game, and I heard a little bit of radio commentary. Some of us might still listen to radio commentary, and I continue to be a radio commentator for AIR till date. But I heard the commentary, and I wasn't very pleased with it. I thought it was actually pretty terrible commentary, right? Being honest. The English commentary wasn't up to mark. I'm a big fan of the Hindi, but sometimes the English commentary I feel is very substandard. And that's not a good thing because radio commentary should be of the highest quality, right? It is, if you look at BBC TMS or if you look at the quality of Australian radio and cricket, and generally radio and sport, I listen to a lot of tennis as well on Australian Open radio, Wimbledon radio. It's phenomenal. And I do not believe that the government broadcaster, the national broadcaster, should not be accumulating the highest quality of commentary. So anyway, so with that, I was a reckless college kid, obviously, at the time. And I decided with a friend of mine to walk past AIR. And I just said, you know what, let's take a chance. Let's go see if we can meet someone in the sports department. And we went with this real swag, and we spoke some very convincing Marathi. And we said, we want to meet the sports section in charge, and they just let you in. Nobody cares about All India Radio, right? If you have a visitor, it's like, wow, God has sent someone to us. Let's welcome them. So they sent us to this lady's office, and I was judging at the time. I was like, oh my God, I'm sure this lady wouldn't even know about cricket, this, that. And as soon as she walks in, I said, hello, ma'am, my name is Raunak. I'm a law student at GLC, and I've been hearing cricket commentary for so long, and I thought yesterday's commentary was terrible. And I didn't want to use the word terrible, but it just came out. Yeah. And I was a bit sort of like, oh God, okay, it's already out there now. I can't do anything. So she started laughing. And she said, I agree. Sometimes the commentary is pretty bad. And this was the lady in charge of sports at All India Radio Mumbai, who also happened to be the lady in charge for English content on the Mumbai broad station. Now, I lucked out, right? I met someone who was an extremely open-minded, fair-headed, level-headed person. And she ended up having a 1-hour conversation with me just like that on the standards of radio broadcast and whatnot and all. And I told her I would love to give this a try, but I don't have any media background or media experience. She's saying, you don't need to have a media background to make it in this field. The skill set that you need, talking to you for the last 15, 20 minutes, I can tell that you have it. So I lucked out by meeting someone who was willing to give talent an opportunity. When she found out I had my law background, she said, would you like to read the news on All India Radio? Once in a while, come and do the odd interview. I said, yes, I'd be very happy to. So that's how it sort of started. And while she said you need to send an application to Delhi if you want to be a commentator, and there's a whole process and whatnot, but I can give you some interviews to do at All India Radio Mumbai with sports personalities, but you have to get the personalities yourself because we don't have the bandwidth. I said, yeah, sure. Now she helped a little bit, and I interviewed Ayaz Memon at the time, and I interviewed Pilu Reporter, who's a former international umpire. And these are little things that we did. I started small, but I accumulated a bank of work, and using that, I then wrote to Sambit Bal, who was the editor of Cricket Info in 2013, and I wrote to him on Facebook, right? I just found him on Facebook and I wrote to him, and thankfully Sambit Bal, who's notorious in the organization of not replying to important emails, somehow decided he wanted to reply to this random Facebook message. And I put this thing, I said, I really want to be a sports broadcaster, I'd done some work with All India Radio. I'd love to write for Cricket Info. I used the word write because I didn't think video existed in 2013 at the time. And he just said, okay, come see me at my office. And, and there are funnier stories from there where he actually gave me the wrong address and whatnot, but that's to digress. Eventually, my learning from it is, yes, take a chance first and foremost, and then hope that you luck out with meeting the right people that are willing to give talent, young people an opportunity, that are willing to look at purely merit and nothing else. And I think as we continue to analyze the landscape of broadcasting today, it will open up to more and more talented people. And that's why I had a similar interaction like the one I'm doing with you a few weeks back with a young upcoming sports journalist in the West Indies. And he asked me a similar question. I said, right now, the world we live in after COVID, we have no idea what it'll be like. But I think there will be a sudden requirement for local talent. You're not going to be as keen necessarily to go and fly fancy people from Australia, England to do simple reporting gigs or broadcast gigs. So why not make the most of this opportunity? And that's how it began. As far as my journey goes, when did I want to? I always wanted to do this. I knew I wanted to do this, but there was no path to doing it. I didn't want to study mass media because I thought it wouldn't teach me anything I didn't already know. So I decided to do law because it was something that stimulated my mind, and I thought it's an exciting field. And from there, the story moved from where it was. So that's what I would say. You need that little luck at the beginning, but once you get it, then make the most of it. What you do with that opportunity now, that defines what you'll eventually become.
Exactly. Makes sense. Okay. So my next question to you has to do with the fact that you've met so many big names in cricket and you've interacted with so many people. Is there something that tells you that, yes, this person is a champion / yes, this person will become a champion in the future? Any defining attribute that you can think of?
I think it's the same as in any field. And it's funny, right? Like if I can take the liberty of sharing what you told me before we started this recording, and you were saying things like, it's hard to sometimes get people to respond.
Exactly.
And sometimes you need to use a contact to get people to do an interaction. And the second thing you tell me was that I'm the first guy who's come in on time. These are little things, but it's funny how in every field the biggest names will actually will showcase the simplest of fine qualities.
Yeah.
So if you have followed my Insta Live series, I started it with Rahul Dravid in July.
Yeah.
And if you did follow that interaction, it was a technological disaster, right? But Rahul and me were both doing an Insta Live for the first time. He was kind enough to actually take the trouble to download Instagram and whatnot. And even then it didn't work out. And I asked him for 10 minutes of his time. And because we couldn't figure all this out, it took us half an hour to finally find an improvised way of me having to use my laptop to get him on Skype on the upper half of my Insta Live video and his audio coming through from the lower half of his Insta Live. So it turned out to be hilarious. And I saw people saying that maybe a normal Insta Live would not have been so much fun, right? But at the end of the day, what do I take away from that? That Rahul Dravid, he responded to my request to do this instantly. Yes, I do share a wonderful professional relationship with him. And I've spent a few moments sort of personally otherwise. But I did not expect him to just say yeah right away, which he did. And then after that, when he saw that I was genuinely, in a spot of bother, for whatever reason, you didn't hear him say a word. He was cooperative, he was patient. We ended up interacting for nearly 40 minutes when I had requested for just 10 minutes of his time. And that for me is a champion. That's why he's such a champion, because he understands. He's not Rahul Dravid. Oh my God, you told me 5 minutes, it's taken 20. You can't figure this out. I'm going away. Right? You never got that from him. So you got the simplest of fine qualities from Rahul. And that's exactly what I've learned from working with a number of fine people at Cricinfo and in broadcast over the last few years. Some of them are just so easy to talk to. Yes, there are a few tough nuts. I wouldn't say no. But most top sportsmen that at least I've had the pleasure of interacting have been just wonderful to work with. Ian Chappell is one of the most humble people I've ever met, even though he comes across as such a cutthroat analyst. He was once having a bit of a headache when we were working in between shows, between a lunch and tea session. And I know most cricketers would have probably said, get the car, I want to go to the hotel. He just put his bag, he had a little carry laptop bag like all of us do. He put his bag on the floor, used it as a pillow, and he just took a nap on the floor. That was just him. He didn't want to bother anybody. He just said, no, sometimes I just probably need a little nap and it'll get okay. I mean, this is Australia's greatest ever former captain, right? And a broadcaster of huge acclaim. Mikey Holding, when we sort of walk around, I spend a lot of time with Mikey in Sydney. I spend some time with him in Cape Town. He could walk around the stadium. He would know if it's a stadium he's familiar with. He would know the local camera person. He would know the groundsman. He would call them by name. He'd have a quick interaction with them. See, he remembers whether somebody's wife was unwell a few days back. He'd ask about her. These are champions.
Yeah.
It's that simple, right? You don't get any air of superiority from them, even though they are such fine, they have such wonderful accomplishments in their careers. So for me, that's what sets them apart. And I must say, I haven't met too many of the current cricketers, in the sense that my work makes me interact more with the former cricketers than the current ones. It's not to say that my interactions with the current ones have been unpleasant, have been great, but you don't get that vibe from the current crop of cricketers. It's that simple. I don't want to generalize. Maybe they are wonderful in their own way. And I do know some of them personally, but that's a hallmark which seems to be on the decline in current days.
That makes it all the more valuable, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's it for our first segment. Now, our second segment is to be about Indian cricket. And the first very obvious question that I have to ask you is that throughout all of these years, your favorite Indian cricket moment is?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I was at the Wankhede in 2011, and therefore nothing can top that. It's that simple. Yeah. So, I mean, nothing will ever beat, more than actually India winning it, because by the end of it, the game turned out to be, the last half an hour or so, you knew India was about to win. But it was the feeling that the way the stadium sunk, including my heart amongst everyone else's, when Sri Lanka made how much they made at halftime, because Mahela had just changed the game entirely. Yeah. And then to lose Sehwag and Tendulkar in the first 20 minutes of the chase, that low was, we couldn't get over getting this. We already started thinking we're not going to win this. And we thought, get this close to beat Pakistan, beat Australia. and then to lose to Sri Lanka, you know, and what would have been victory on home soil. That would have, we were trying to figure how would we deal with that. And then suddenly when you were lifted, when Gambhir played the innings of that game for me, with due respect to Dhoni, Gambhir played the most important innings in that game. And then to sort of lift that feeling is something I don't think we'll ever witness again. So yeah, so it's easy in a way.
There's this video of that final where I honestly get chills watching that video, wherein the entire crowd is singing Vande Mataram and the players. I get chills looking at that video, so I can just imagine how it must be to be in that stadium.
Oh no, it was unbelievable. It was and then the celebrations after as well, right? Mumbai went mad. India had won the World Cup. The local trains were letting people just get on it for free. You know, you don't need to worry about having tickets and whatnot. I mean, it was madness. I had to get off at Bandra to meet a few friends, and there was no point taking a taxi or a rickshaw because the roads were packed. They were dancing on top of buses, on top of each other's cars. I mean, literally, you can't now imagine any of this in a post-COVID world. So you just think how fortunate you were that you managed to have this great experience before the world suddenly went, you know, to hell. So yeah, so that's right up there.
That's great. Okay, and now there's a segment of my blog wherein people put in questions that they might want to ask. So 2 questions that have come across. Firstly, that since we might not have the IPL this year, and again, we don't know about when the World T20 will happen. There is no decision that has come out yet. The future of Mahendra Singh Dhoni lies in the balance, and we don't know when we will see him next. So where do you think his future in the Indian cricket team lies?
Yeah, so I think the future of the Indian cricket team, that answers, it's almost answered itself, right? MS Dhoni has not played for India since the World Cup semi-final over a year back. For all practical purposes, you have to discount him as an Indian cricketer. He is not a current Indian cricketer. He played over a year back. He hasn't announced a retirement, but I've always believed retirement is something very personal. Players may not want to announce it for whatever reasons. And it's not upon anybody to say Dhoni should retire. No, that's wrong. What it should be upon is for the team and the selectors to know exactly who is part of their plans in the future and who's not. And I think we even heard it from MSK Prasad before he stepped down in his tenure as chairman, that he said we are looking at other options now. And that's as simple as that. That's as explicit as it's going to come from a BCCI employee. Yeah, that we're not going to pick Dhoni now because he's not available. He's not playing for India. That's it. Do you think if Dhoni wanted to play for India, he wouldn't have made himself available? Of course he would have.
Exactly.
Why would he miss series after series? Yeah, 1 series, 2 series to get the body back, or maybe a little downtime, fine. Why would he miss an entire year? It's impossible. So that question has been answered by Dhoni himself. I don't believe he has any interest in playing for India anymore. And I don't think the team needs MS Dhoni either. KL Rahul's become a very handy choice in ODI cricket, a credible choice with the gloves. Rishabh Pant, I think, has got a bright future in spite of the huge divide in opinion on Pant at the moment. And, and he's anyway not played Test cricket. He's retired from Test cricket for very many years. So that settles it for me. I don't think we'll see Dhoni in India colours again. And I don't think anybody should be disappointed. This is a glorious career, one of India's greatest ever players to play the white ball game. And we should celebrate it exactly as that. In fact, I would think he's India's greatest ever Test keeper batsman as well. That's what you should celebrate. As far as the IPL goes, I think Dhoni is still good enough to play 1, maybe 2 IPLs, assuming they happen in the next 2 years. You can carry on playing T20 cricket even till you're 50. I mean, Praveen Tambe has been picked in the CPL recently. Yeah. So who's to say that Dhoni won't be a handy enough keeper batsman for Chennai even, 2 or 3 years down the line. But I do think it's hard for players to be fit just for the IPL to IPL. And it always makes an impact when you stop playing international cricket. We've seen that. And Dhoni, unlike other retired cricketers, will not be playing other T20 leagues, right? So that's the other problem that'll have. I think there will be an IPL this year. I genuinely get the feeling with the World Cup in serious doubt that the IPL will pop up suddenly. And I think the BCCI would also want to have 2 IPLs in close distance to really recover the cricket economy, revive the cricket economy. So I think that works well for Dhoni. We're seeing pictures and videos of him on Instagram, which makes him look like an older man than he is. But the minute he shaves all that off, I'm sure he'll be fit and certainly good enough to play for CSK. So Dhoni fans shouldn't worry. They will see more of him, but they'll see it in yellow, not in blue, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, and there is one more question that since the 2015 World Cup, India have been continuously revolving between Rahane and UV and Pant and a lot of players for the number 4 batsmen, and finally have come down to settle to Shreyas Iyer. So do you think that Shreyas Iyer is finally he's been worth the wait and he's finally the number 4 batsman that India should have, or there is still someone who must be explored?
Well, he's certainly the man for the job right now. And getting runs in New Zealand certainly does help because you get in overseas conditions. So that's a big plus. I think he's a talented batsman, and I think he's figuring out exactly what India needs at number 4. So that spot is his for the taking right now. Let's not forget, though, that there is still a lot of uncertainty surrounding the balance of the Indian ODI team. And that will continue because we won't have as much ODI cricket over the next 2 years. There'll be a lot of T20 cricket. There'll be a lot of Test cricket. There won't be as much ODI cricket.
Yeah.
And they still are keen to keep KL Rahul at number 5 is the impression that they're giving now because they want him to settle into that role. I think the team needs to ask itself, what is it that they're looking to achieve ahead of the 2023 World Cup, assuming that's still on track and on course. But I think they gave Rishabh Pant a bit of a raw deal. And I am a Rishabh Pant sympathizer, and a lot of people aren't. I believe that he should not have been thrown into the middle of a World Cup to do a job that you had plenty of time to getting someone accustomed for. And if he was the person to take to the World Cup, he should have gone in the first squad, and he should have played at least 30 games at number 4. And that never happened. They kept shuffling him up and down the order. Eventually, they didn't even find him good enough to be part of the 15. They took Dinesh Karthik. And then they threw Pant in, once Vijay Shankar got injured. And I just found that to be a bit confusing. You give confusing signals to a player, and then when he fails, you wonder what went wrong. Right?
No that player came after a time when MSK Prasad had explicitly said that Raidu will be someone who will be...
Exactly. Raidu was supposed to be the reserve batsman, and suddenly Pant goes in ahead of him. I'm just saying that no player in history has ever succeeded when he hasn't been given at least a reasonable amount of support and opportunity. And people might argue against this point, saying Pant has several innings under his belt. But if you actually go and break down the context of those innings and how obviously he has come in at different times, and it's a really difficult role to understand, right? The number 4 in ODI cricket, sometimes you can come in at 10 for 2. And sometimes if Virat Kohli does his thing, you can come in, with just 7 or 8 overs left, and you have to start slogging, right? Can you expect any batsman to have all those gears in his first 15, 20 innings? Of course not. It takes time to acclimatize. And I think just as, and India had to make some changes after the World Cup semi-final. They got rid of Dinesh Karthik. So I think calls were taken without much thought. That having been said, the Indian cricket team is an extremely high pressure position, and the fight for competition is so immense that you have to make more of even limited opportunities. So that's where I can hold it against Pant, that he should have at least had one really breakthrough innings in ODI cricket. I still think he should be in the T20 team, and that's unfortunate that he's lost his place there. But Shreyas Iyer has now put in the performances, and I think this is his spot, for the time being. There's still talk of Kohli going in at 4 and whatnot, which I'm not a fan of. But Shreyas Iyer is the man for the job right now. Will he be the man in 2023? I don't think we can say that for sure just yet.
Okay. And one more question. I was recently interviewing Ramesh Naidu. He's a player with the Indian Physically Challenged team. And these guys you must know, they won the World Series last year. But the point is that even in a country like India, where we literally have cricket as our religion, these aspects of the game go unnoticed. You don't have wheelchair cricket, blind cricket, and physically challenged cricket ever talked about. And they get little to no significance. So how do you think can broadcasting change, or how do you think the notion of the nation change to bring this also into the limelight?
I think it's a good question. And I must confess, being a cricket broadcaster myself, if you ask me to name the 11 of the Indian, the para team or the physically challenged Indian team 11, I wouldn't be able to. And I guess it's all about exposure and awareness. And what cricket has done with the women's game has to be commended, because it was a game again that desperately needed a bit of a boost. It needed to be promoted as aggressively as the men's game tends to be, and they found the formula, right? They found a way to do that by firstly having a lot of premier importance given to women's ICC events. They got the best broadcasters, the best setup. There was a time when the women's game and the men's tournaments used to be held concurrently. which I think did help. And I think in similar fashion, if let's say the next time we do, let's say if the T20 World Cup was to happen, let's say there was an exhibition game just before the final of the Indian physically challenged team versus the Australians, I think that would help. That would bring a crowd of 80,000 or 100,000 at the MCG would have got witnessed this game. It certainly added more stature to the game. It would have been a sense of appreciation to the game a little more. It's a bit hard to compare that with the same as the women's and the men's team, where we're looking at equality of a different level, whereas the sport is intrinsically different when it's played by the physically challenged teams. But that having been said, their achievements aren't any smaller. I know the BCCI does well in terms of rewarding these players well, and they give them fair remuneration, even incentives, and it's something that they hold in high regard. But how do you take the step from just the board valuing it to even the public and the cricket loving public value it? You just find ways to make sure it's more visible. And I think that's what the sport needs to do. Maybe, like I said, an exhibition game or a series that also is played along with a World Cup or a World T20 would be a starting point. Maybe before an IPL final, you could have an exhibition game of the men's team. So something like that, perhaps.
That's actually something that will help. And it's something, if the suggestion ever goes up, I think it will genuinely help.